This episode of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast is brought to you by Legacy Staffs, which are crafted by the Brazos Walking Stick Company in Waco, Texas. You can go to brazosticks.com and use the name Mac Payne, one word, at the checkout and get 10% off your next order of the Legacy Staff or cane of your own design.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 1826 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. In this episode, I'm going to put the spotlight on an aircraft that served very well in Vietnam that you don't hear too much about. That aircraft is the Cessna O-2 Skymaster. It was a strange-looking little aircraft. It was small. It had two engines on it, one in the front and one in the back. That little aircraft did a very good job in Vietnam. It had two missions. One was forward air control. The other was PYSOPS, where they would hang big speakers on it and fly around trying to get the South Vietnamese civilians to stay with us. I think the Blues Brothers were inspired by that mission when they put the big speakers on their car announcing their big show. Going to share a story with you about these little aircraft that appeared on the National Interest website. Title of the story is Cessna O-2 Skymasters. This low-cost twin-engine aircraft was a master of the sky. It surely was. A personal note here. I went over to Vietnam twice. One time, I arrived there in 1967 and was assigned to the Fighting 4th Infantry Division up in the Central Highlands, based out of Camp Anari, a few miles south of Pleiku. Situated right next to, I think they called it Monkey Mountain. There's a long story involved with that, which will make you scratch your head. But that's for another time and place. It did not take me long after I arrived at Camp Anari to make a stunning realization. I'd say about 2 weeks after I was there, I came to the astounding realization that the whole Vietnam War was, putting it nicely, an intimate affair with a herd of goats. I could easily tell, even at my level, it was one screwed up mess over there. I made this realization as I was sitting near the main gate to the Camp Anari enclosure. That was a 2 square mile area out there in the rolling high plains of the Central Highlands. I realized that I should not really get upset about this. So I made the determination that I was not going to worry too much about the ins and outs of the Vietnam War and decided on 2 things. Number 1, I was going to stay alive, and number 2, I was going to enjoy the sights, which I did. My first tour was wonderful in the respect that I got to see a lot of that country close up. Luckily, it was up north in the mountains and a little bit out on the coastal plains near Duck Pho, LZ Baldy, and Bang San. That was great. Made many trips going up and down Highway 19 through the Man Yang and the An Khe passes. Drove through numerous ambushes out there on that highway. I was always impressed with the way they could blow away, trying to destroy our convoys. Got to see a lot of things on that first tour, which I appreciate. My second tour, it got even better as far as seeing interesting things. I had the privilege of being allowed to fly Cobra gunships with a battery, 4th of the 77th Field Artillery with the 101st Airborne Division, flying out of Phu Bai, not too far from the base camp at Camp Eagle. The other brigade was up at Camp Evans, not too far up the road, headed toward Quang Tri. In that job of flying Cobras around I-Corps, I got the opportunity to see all sorts of aircrafts and ordnance and After a while, I thought maybe the Air Force was just putting on a display just for me so I could see all these things. Thankfully, I had made that earlier determination that the Vietnam War was one big, intimate affair with a herd of goats. Some of the things I saw really didn't bother me. For instance, they would use sophisticated F-4 jet fighters, along with the F-105s, to engage guerrilla forces in the jungles. The opponents in those jungles found out rather quickly it was fairly easy to knock down those sophisticated, expensive jet aircraft that were dropping snake and nape on them. On occasion, when I would really care about the situation, I would ask, why are they using these sophisticated, expensive jets when the old, reliable Sky Raiders could do the job a whole lot better at a lot less cost? I did see Sky Raiders out there every once in a while flying around. It was amazing. First time I saw one in the environs of Quezon, I thought, I'm in a time warp here. We are being invaded by World War II aircraft. It looked just like it came back from a mission over Iwo Jima. Those Sky Raiders were perfect for fighting the enemy in the jungles over there. They were propeller driven. They didn't go that fast. You didn't need speed over there. You needed firepower, which they had a bunch of. They also had the ability to hang around on station for it seemed like days at the time. They could load those aircraft up with all sorts of ordnance, and they would do a good job. But no, did they use them extensively? No. They kept using the F-4s and 105s over there against a very unsophisticated enemy running around the triple canopy forest over there. But no one asked my opinion, so I just carried on, trying to stay alive and counting up all the money I was going to make because I put my entire Army salary into that fabulous 10% savings program over there. That allowed me to come home and begin my career in real estate investments. Turned out real good. I lived through it, and that turned out real good. One day, flying out there, rocking and socking the bad guys on the ground, suddenly I saw this strange aircraft fly by, and I said, what in the world is that? In the front, it looked like a Cessna 170. And then I noticed it had a strange rear end. It had a motor in the back. That was a cool-looking aircraft. It could just scoot around and shoot rockets down and mark targets for the fast movers to come in. I was very impressed with that aircraft. I could see that it was doing a good job, and I could also tell it was not as expensive as some of the others that were being used over there. That's why I wanted to talk about the old reliable Cessna O-2 Skymaster. Seeing one of those things fly around over there in Vietnam made you feel like you were almost at home because I remember seeing them fly around the skies of America. I'm going to share this story with you so that you can gain a better appreciation of this wonderfully efficient aircraft from the Vietnam War. By the way, this story was written and submitted by Mr. Peter Sucia. Peter, if I mispronounced your last name, I sincerely apologize. It's spelled S-U-C-I-U. If anybody out there knows how to pronounce that name, let me know. I hate to mispronounce someone's name. A person's name is an especially personal connection to everybody. I like to pronounce them correctly. So, Peter, please cut me a break if I mispronounce your name. Let's get on with your story, Peter. Again, title is Cessna O-2 Skymasters. This low-cost twin-engine aircraft was a master of the sky. Dateline, the national interest website. With a name like the Skymaster, one might envision a super heavy bomber loaded with advanced armaments or perhaps the fastest fighter to fly into the wild blue yonder. However, the Cessna O-2 Skymaster, which was also affectionately nicknamed Oscar Deuce, was neither. It was primarily used for forward air control and psychological operations. By most accounts, it excelled in both. During the Vietnam War in late 1966, the United States Air Force selected a military variant of the Cessna Model 337 Super Skymaster to supplement the aging O-1 Bird Dog for use as a FAC aircraft to operate in Southeast Asia. The low-cost, twin-engine piston-powered aircraft featured the unique push-pull configuration with one engine in the nose and a second in the rear of the fuselage. That offered advantages for the pilots, notably that it provided a clear observation below and behind the aircraft, while the twin engines also enable the O-2 to absorb more gunfire and still return safely to base. The seats were also armored to protect the crew. That means if one of those little guys down in the jungle got lucky and knocked out the number one engine up front, you could fly home with the engine in the rear. In its FAC capacity, the Skymaster ensured that air attacks would be aimed at the intended target and not come down on friendly troops. Sometimes to do that took more than a good FAC controller. I've seen too many of those fast-moving jets drop their bombs on the wrong people. Continuing. While the Cessna O-2 wasn't the only FAC aircraft, and the U.S. Air Force relied on a number of other aircraft, including the A-26 Invader. Pardon me, I have to throw in, are you kidding me? The A-26 Invader was a World War II bomber. I never saw one of those in Vietnam, and I can't believe they would even consider using an A-26 for forward air control. They also used the C-123 Provider and the Lockheed AC-130 in a similar role. The Skymaster proved well suited to the task. I also sincerely doubt that C-123s or C-130s were used as FAC aircraft, unless they just happened to be in the area and called in some fire on something, but not as a normal operating procedure. Continuing. A total of 532 O-2s were built for the Air Force in two series, the O-2A and the O-2B. The former carried wing pylons for rockets, flares, and other light ordnance, and in its FAC role, it could identify and mark enemy targets with smoke rockets, coordinate airstrikes, and even report target damage. The O-2 Bravo version operated in a completely different role, one of PYSOPS, where it was equipped with loudspeakers and leaflet dispensers. That version of the aircraft carried no ordnance. Both versions of the Skymaster were powered by two 210 Continental 10-360s engines and had a maximum speed of 199 miles per hour, a range of 1,060 miles, and a ceiling of 19,300 feet. You wonder how they got it so exact down to 19,300. Wouldn't it be easier just to say 19,000? But in practice, the Skymaster tended to fly just above the treetops. The aircraft had a crew of two, a pilot and an observer. Following the Vietnam War, the O-2 remained in service with the U.S. Air Force and Air National Guard, and in the 1980s, 6 of the former aircraft were transferred to the U.S. Navy, where the Skymaster was used as range controller. The aircraft remained in that role until September of 1990, when they were replaced by the T-34C Turbo Mentor. 2 of the Vietnam War-era O-2s were used in air shows in the 1990s, performing with the Vietnam Warbird COIN/FAC routine, which made its debut at the Wings Over Houston Air Show in October of 1991. Today, surviving Cessna O-2 Skymasters are in the collections of numerous museums, including the National Museum of the United States Air Force, the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, the Pima Air and Space Museum, the Evergreen Aviation Museum, and the Yankee Air Museum. I would encourage you to go to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com, episode 1826, and there you will find a list of those museums. You can get all the details you need to know. If you'd like to go to one of those museums to see an actual O-2 on display. Another reason I like those aircraft, besides the fact that they did a great job in Vietnam, I like them because generally a Cobra gunship would outrun one of those aircraft, if you got a good one. Numerous aircraft in our battery were what I would refer to as pigs, because some pilots would have the tendency to overwork the engines, and they would not fly as fast as they were supposed to. The O-2s did a great job in Vietnam. Of the 532 that Cessna built for the Air Force, 191 of them were lost in Vietnam. Most were shot down, others were lost to accidents and other reasons. Now you know about the O-2 Skymasters and the wonderful job they did in Vietnam, directing targets for the fast movers, and on occasion for the Cobra gunships. They did a great job, and they are another part of the Vietnam War heritage. In this Vietnam veterans' estimation, they were a positive addition to the Vietnam War array of weapons used there. I'm glad they were there. Peter, thank you so much for telling us about them. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 1826 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to listen to more of these stories that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?